We'll do Mishnah Beis in Perik Gimel in Masechta Bava Kama. Zog the Mishnah Beis. Hashoifech mayim birshus harabim. One who pours water in the public domain. And we're talking about, as we'll see in the Bartanura, that this was in the winter time when there is rain and moisture in the public domain anyway. So a person has a right to pour his own personal waters from his yard into the public domain. But still, if somebody gets hurt, he will have to pay for the damages, because while you have a right to pour the water, you don't, it doesn't exempt you from having to pay. So the Mishnah says like this: Hashoifech mayim birshus harabim v'hu zak bohem achar. If you pour water in the rishus harabim, and you did it in the winter time, and you have a right in the winter time to pour the water in the rishus harabim, but someone else went and he got hurt he slipped over the water. He got injured by the water that you poured out. So even though you had a right, Chayav Beniska, you're still going to be liable to pay for his damages. The one who poured the water, it's your water, you're put it out there. You have a right to put it there, but you're still going to be responsible. Hashoifech ma'im b'rishus harabim zog the Bartanura. Even though he's doing it with permission, the Chachamim say that you're allowed to in the winter. We're talking about in the days of the winter and when it's permissible to pour water into the public domain. But still, if someone else got hurt, Chayav Beniska, you are responsible for the damages. You're liable, and you would have to pay the person for the damages. So that's a chiddush that you are allowed to do it, but still, if somebody gets hurt, you would still be responsible. Zog the Mishnah Hamatzniya es hakoitz ves
So
hazuchuchis.
is that a din of butter? In other words, it's a butter that you're
This
allowed to make.
actually is more because it's your water and it's more like your property. If you put your property in the public domain, we learned before, uh, you can't really even mafkir it, because if you put a stumbling block in the rishus is, even if you mafkir it, even though it's not necessarily boyer, it's really shoyer, it's your damages. I mean, you own the water and therefore you're responsible. But I'm not sure if it's only of it could be maybe boyer too. But
Yeah, because otherwise,
huh?
in other words, if you didn't do anything wrong, so you're
A
allowed to make.
little louder. I don't hear you, one.
No, I'm saying if you didn't do anything wrong, so why should you be chayiv?
But you know what? You didn't do any wrong, but you did damage. That's the chance that you take. You're taking a chance by, by putting it out. It's the Chachamim tell you in the first place. You put it out, and that's okay. But if somebody hurts himself from that, then you'll be responsible. I mean, it'll be kind of, you'll see in a minute, it'll be kind of interesting to see uh, what
Why is
happens.
it not like a oinus? Why is it not like a oinus? You have rishos.
Not an onus, because we're telling you to begin with that, you know what, if you want to do it, but it's your responsibility. We tell you it's on your own achrayas, that if nobody gets hurt. The other question becomes, really, how do we know exactly whose water he got hurt by? Maybe it was some other water. Okay, but let's leave this for on to exactly investigate. You'll see in a minute what the Mishnah gives a certain rule over here. Then we have hamatzniya as hakoitz as hazuchuchis. These are things that are dangerous, and you decided to hide it in the public domain. So you put away koitz is thorns, zuchuchis is glass, and you put it away in the Rishus Harabim somewhere. And then again, somebody, as we'll see, somebody gets damaged by it. Or
So you
Vagoider,
didn't do enough. You didn't do a good enough. How did it become uncovered? It was not good enough.
because apparently it's in the public domain. You don't hide things. He thought that it's going to be like out of the way. But apparently, if somebody gets hurt by it, we're saying you're still responsible because
Like
that's
a
not a
boiler.
place to
Like
put things away. It's in this case though, he was, you can argue like you argued before. This is like a bigger chiddush. A boyer is an obvious obstacle in the public domain, but over here, this is something which you put away and you meant that it should be out of harm's way, but you put it in the public domain. This is something that you're going to be responsible. I think this is not as obvious as a damage as normally we understand the board to be, because you hit it. You see hamatznia, you hit it in there. So you're trying to avoid, but the chiddush is, it's in the public domain. Somebody gets hurt, and we'll see in a minute when there will be a difference. I'm sure all these dinim have halacha stipulations, but we're learning the Mishnah, the main halacha. V'hagoider as gideirei bakoitzim. If a person makes a fence out of thorns, barbed wires like today we have. So a person makes a fence with barbed wires, but in this case, it's protruding into the public domain. So the thorns, but in this case, we're talking about koitzim. He makes it with thorns, with barbed wire, and it is out in the Rishus Harabim, and the Bartanura will make a distinction. If the fence is exactly on your property line and the thorns are on your property line, then you're not going to be responsible if somebody scratches himself, gets hurt on the fence, because you built it in your property. And people don't normally, it's not considered to be a damage for the public thoroughway, because people don't usually scratch against the wall. So therefore, your wall, the person that scratch themselves, they're not in that case not going to be responsible. Let's look to Bartanura. So it said in the Mishnah, it doesn't say where. It says akoitz vaschuchi. So the Bartanura explains he put the koitz and the schuchi in the public domain. The same thing is if he makes his fence with these thorns. So he says, he blew them, or meaning they're protruding into the public domain. So if your damage is in the public domain, whether you hit him, whether it's your fence, it doesn't matter. You're going to be responsible because this is a damage in the Rishus Harabim. Again, is this boir, or is it because you own it? I think in this case, it's also because you own it. But one who is exactly makes sure that the fence should be within his property line, and it has thorns. Somebody in the public domain goes and gets hurt, then you're going to be potter. It's potter. Why? The reason is it's not the normal way for people to rub against the walls. So if he rubbed against the wall and he got hurt by the thorns, that's his problem. But it seems very clearly also, if it was normally that the people would be in the Rishus Harabim would normally go to the sides, then you shouldn't make your fence with thorns, and then you would be responsible. But because the nature of people is not to scratch against the walls or to rub against the walls, and this guy went and did the unusual thing, then you're not chai for him. The same thing is v'goder shenofal l'rishus harabim, a fence that fell into the public domain, and it's your fence. And I believe that's what I remember from the Gemara, but I'm not sure. It doesn't say here, but I believe that it's talking about a situation that you had an opportunity to clean it up. like the law is in some states, in some communities, that if you don't clean up the snow within a certain amount of time, then you're responsible for the people that trip over there. I think if a fence falls down, not intentionally, and you didn't have a chance, maybe that would be an onus. I don't think you'll have to pay for it. I think that in this case, I got to look this up. I think that the Godesh Nofel Rishus Harabim, and you had an opportunity to pick it up, V'husku b'hen achedim, and others got damaged, then chayiv beniska, and you're chayiv to pay for it. So again, I think I think that the din is, if somebody has a Mishnah there to look it up quickly, they can correct. But I think that it must be that you had a chance to pick it up and you didn't pick it up. Mishnah Gimel. Hamoitzi as tivnoi ve'as kashtoi l'rshus harabim. Tivnoi is the straws, those are the leftover from the grains, and the kash, other, it's the stalks, the kash, l'rshus harabim. So what does he put it out to the public domain? Lizvolim. He wants to fertilize, use it as fertilizer. How does it? Why is he taking it out to the Rishus Harabim? Because it's pieces, and he wants the people that walk in the Rishus Harabim to step on it. And if they step on enough on it, it will turn into fertilizer, and then he'll bring it back. It's his fertilizer. They'll bring it back to his yard and use it as fertilizer. Lizvolim zoktrashi. Sheyirkevu hateven, the teven, the straw should rot, v'hakash, and the kash, v'nasim zevel lizabel soder zukrav. They become the zevel, the fertilizer, to fertilize the fields and the orchard. So he's taking out his teven and his kash to the public domain to turn into zvolim. Now, another person goes by, trips over it, over his kash, his teven, chayiv beniska. He's obligated to pay for the damages. Now, even though he had a right, as we'll see in a minute, even though he had a right, just like with the water before, even though he had a right to put it out over there, but still, you are going to be liable. If somebody gets hurt on what you've taken out, you'll still have to pay for the damages. But there's another big chidush halacha. There's the chol hakoidim b'emzach. I made a mistake. I just said that he had a right. He Pasha does not have a right to do that. And that's why the Chachamim, previously by the water, it was taka. That's the chilik between the Mishnah Beis and Mishnah Gimel. By the water, the person has a right to bring it out. But over here, the person doesn't have a right to bring it out. So therefore, if somebody else gets hurt, chayiv b'niskay. But not only that, v'chol hakoidem b'hen zocha. You're putting out a damage into the public domain. The Chachamim punished you. They said whoever grabs it first is zoicha. Somebody else wants to take the taban and the kash, wants to turn it into fertilizer in his own backyard. He is zoicha. It becomes hefke, the kansinu rabbonon. That is a punishment of the rabbonon for putting out a damage into the public domain. Rab Shimon Gamliel Omer. It seems like Rab Shimon Gamliel isn't really disagreeing on this. Yeah, he's disagreeing, as we'll see. In this case, he doesn't have a right to do it. But he says, Kol hamekalkalim b'reshus harabim, if you ruin the reshus harabim, and meaning that sometimes you're allowed to. They say, v'yiziku, and they did damages, chayovim l'shalem, you would have to pay. Zog de Bartanura, kol ha'mekalkel b'reshus harabim, what he is saying, va'afilo oisim b'reshus, even if they're doing it by right, kegoin b'shas itzos zvolim, like at the time, is a time that people take out the zvolim. That means this is talking about garbage. I guess they didn't have garbage trucks picking up, and there was a time that they would throw out the zevel into the public place. So you have a right. That's the time that people bring up the zevel over there. I guess today would be equivalent maybe if you put out the garbage cans or the time when they're collecting the garbage can. But in this case, I mean, it's not like us. In this case, it's called mekalkelim b'rshus harabim. They're ruining the rshus harabim. So sometimes, even if you have a right to do so, but you're still ruining the rshus harabim. Kegoyim b'shas itzos volim im hiziku chayovim. If you did damage, then you are liable. This would be similar to the case of the water before in the previous Mishnah, that when you had a right to put out the water, but if somebody gets hurt, you still would have to pay for it. Over here, he says, even if you have a right. But he adds to the previous din, v'chol hakoydem b'hem zocha. Meaning, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he adds, he disagrees with the Tanakama, because the Tanakama talks about a case where he didn't have a right to pick it up. But here, he's talking about even he had a right to pick it up, still we say chol hakoydem b'hem zocha. Whoever takes first is zocha. Ha'hoifech, one more halacha. Ha'hoifech is a golol b'rshus harabim. One who turns over the golol. The golol is the dung of the animal. Goes there, did it in the rshus harabim. Apparently, when the animal does its needs over there, somebody gets hurt, that's the animal has a right to be here. You have to watch not to touch the dung. But if you turn it around because you wanted to acquire it and you wanted to take the dung and you put it into your property, and somebody got damaged in it, then you would be chayiv to pay. So, okay. So this is the over here. Let me just stop here.